Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The muzzle of the magnum was cold against his forehead, a circle of freezing death that contrasted violently with the feverish heat radiating from the man holding the trigger. "Give me one reason why I shouldn't paint this wall with your brains, Lysander," the man growled, his voice a low rumble of thunder that vibrated through the floorboards. I blinked, the haziness of consciousness slamming into me with the force of a freight train. The smell of ozone, rotting concrete, and the overwhelming, terrifying scent of burnt cedar and blood, and Alpha's pheromones in high distress, assaulted my senses. I wasn't in my apartment anymore. I was looking down the barrel of a gun held by Kalin Dvorak, the male lead of the post-apocalyptic novel Ashes of Dawn. And I was currently inhabiting the body of Lysander Vance, the treacherous Omega who had just sold out the location of the last human sanctuary to the mutant horde. I had transmigrated. And I had transmigrated exactly 5 seconds before my execution. 3 seconds, Kalin snarled, his finger tightening on the trigger. His eyes, usually described in the book as piercing sapphire, were currently blown wide, the pupils vertical slits of feral rage. The scar running down his left cheek, a souvenir from a Class A mutant, twitched. I didn't have time to panic. I didn't have time to mourn my old life. The plot had reached the climax of Volume 1, where Lysander dies. If I wanted to live, I had to derail the narrative now. "Because the horde isn't coming at dawn," I gasped out, my voice raspy, foreign to my own ears. I forced myself to look directly into those predator eyes, fighting the biological urge of this Omega body to bare its neck in submission. "They're already here. The perimeter sensors have been looped. You have 12 minutes before the southern gate is breached." Kalin froze. The gun didn't waver, but the killing intent shifted, curdling into confusion. This wasn't in the script. The original Lysander had begged, cried, and blamed his parents. He hadn't offered tactical intel. "Lies," Kalin spat, though his gaze flickered toward the console on his wrist. "Check the seismic variance." I pressed, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. "The loop only covers visual feeds. It doesn't cover ground tremors. Check it, Kalin, or we all die right now." For a heartbeat, silence reigned in the cramped, grimy interrogation room. Then, Kalin shifted. He didn't lower the gun, but he glanced at his wrist unit. He tapped the screen. A moment later, his face drained of color. The sensors were screaming red. The ground beneath us shuddered. Kalin holstered the weapon in a blur of motion, grabbing me by the collar of my torn uniform. He hauled me to my feet, his grip bruising. "If you're lying about the breach point," he hissed, his breath hot against my ear, "I will feed you to them myself while you're still screaming." "Deal?" I choked out. The corridor outside was chaos. Red emergency lights strobed, casting long, dancing shadows against the rusted metal walls of the bunker. The wail of the siren was deafening, a banshee scream signaling the end of the world. We were running. Kalin moved with the lethal grace of a jaguar, his assault rifle raised, clearing corners with military precision. I stumbled behind him, my wrist manacled to his belt. It was a humiliating, pragmatic tether. He needed my knowledge, but he didn't trust me as far as he could throw me. "Sector 4 is compromised," Kalin barked into his comms, the sound of gunfire erupting in the distance. "Evacuate to the rail lines. Abandon the heavy ordnance. We move light." "Commander," a voice crackled back. "The blast doors are jammed. Blow them," Kalin roared. We skidded around a corner and ran straight into a nightmare. A scourge, a mutant created by the fallout, all elongated limbs, exposed muscle, and too many teeth, was tearing through a steel bulkhead. It turned its eyeless head toward us, screeching. Kalin didn't hesitate. He shoved me behind a concrete pillar and opened fire. The hallway lit up with muzzle flashes. The noise was earth-shattering. I pressed my back against the cold stone, hyperventilating. In the novel, Lysander was a pampered, selfish brat who used his looks to manipulate powerful alphas before betraying them for better living conditions. He had no combat skills. But I was a fan of survival horror. I knew the lore of this world better than the author did. I peeked around the pillar. Kalin was reloading, but 2 more scourges were dropping from the ventilation shafts above him. He didn't see the one directly behind him. 6 o'clock. Hi, I screamed. Kalen dropped to his knees, sliding across the slick floor as the mutant's claws slashed the air where his head had been a millisecond prior. He fired upward, the rounds punching through the creature's skull, dropping it in a heap of black ichor. He scrambled up, breathing hard, and looked at me. There was a strange glint in his eyes, a mixture of adrenaline and suspicion. Since when does a traitor watch my back? Since his survival depends on yours. I shot back, trembling not from fear, but from the overwhelming sensory input. The smell of the scourge blood was acidic, burning my nose. Being an Omega in this world was a curse. Every scent was amplified. Move, Kalen commanded, yanking the tether. We fought our way to the surface. The bunker, meant to be the last bastion of humanity in this region, was burning. The sky above was a bruised purple, choked with ash clouds. The ruins of the old city skeletonized against the horizon. The transport is gone, Kalen said, staring at the burning wreckage of the convoy. His jaw tightened, the muscles feathering. He looked at me, his hand drifting to his knife. I don't need a prisoner in the wasteland, Lysander. You're dead weight. I know where the hidden supply cache is, I blurted out. The one the author, the one the founders left. Sector 7. Kalen paused. Sector 7 is a myth. It's under the old cathedral, I said rapidly. Medical supplies. Clean water. Inhibitors. At the word inhibitors, Kalen's eyes darkened. In this world, alphas and omegas were slaves to their biology. Without suppressants, a rut or heat could be a death sentence in the wild, attracting mutants from miles away. Kalen was running low. I could smell the fraying edges of his control. You better be right, he growled, turning away from the burning base. Walk. 3 days. We had been walking for 3 days through the Hell's Cape of the Ashlands. The relationship between us was a jagged, bleeding thing. Kalen treated me like a pack mule, making me carry the scavenged supplies while he took point. He didn't speak to me unless necessary, and when he did, it was with dripping contempt. Drink, he ordered, tossing a canteen at me during a brief rest stop in the hollowed-out shell of a bus. I caught it, uncapping it with shaking hands. My lips were cracked, my body aching in places I didn't know existed. The original Lysander was soft. I was paying the price for his lack of conditioning. Why? Kalen asked suddenly. He was cleaning his rifle, not looking at me. Why what? Why did you sell us out? The governor gave you everything. You were safe. I lowered the canteen. This was the trap. If I answered as the old Lysander, I'd say something vain like asterisk, they offered me silk sheets. Asterisk, but I couldn't say I wasn't him. That would sound insane. I wanted to be free. I lied, choosing a half-truth. Safety in a cage is still a cage, Commander. The governor. He touched me like I was livestock. Kalen stopped scrubbing the barrel. He looked up, his expression unreadable. The governor was a secondary villain, a slimy beta who hoarded omegas. It was a plausible lie. So you doomed 300 people to die because you didn't like being touched? Kalen's voice was cold steel. I didn't think they would kill everyone. I whispered, injecting a tremor into my voice. I thought they just wanted the territory. I was wrong. You were wrong. Kalen mocked, standing up. He towered over me, his shadow swallowing me whole. He reached out, grabbing my chin, forcing me to look up. His fingers were calloused, rough against my skin. You have the face of an angel, Lysander, but your soul is rotten. Don't think for a second that this utility saves you. Once we reach the cache, once I have the inhibitors, you're on your own. Understood, I said, my pulse jumping where his thumb pressed against my throat. The contact was electric. It shouldn't have been. He was my executioner. I was his prisoner. But the biology of this body was traitorous. My scent glands, located on the side of my neck, flared in response to his dominance. A sweet, cloying scent of night-blooming jasmine drifted from me. Kalen flinched as if burned. He released me instantly, stepping back, his face twisting in disgust. Control yourself. I can't. I snapped, frustration bubbling over. I haven't had suppressants in weeks. Neither have you. Don't act like you don't smell it. Kalen turned his back on me. Get your gear. We're moving. The storm hit that night. Not a rainstorm, but an ion storm. Green lightning tearing through the sky. charging the air with static that made your hair stand on end and drove the mutants into a frenzy. We took shelter in the basement of the ruined cathedral. It was damp, dark, and smelled of centuries-old incense and decay. The entrance to the cache should be behind the altar, I said, shining a dying flashlight at the stone wall. Kalen moved the heavy stone slab with a grunt of exertion. Behind it, a pristine metal door awaited. A keypad. The code, he demanded. 7-7-0-1. I recited. He punched it in. Green light. The door hissed open. The cache was real. Shelves of canned food, weapons, and a medical fridge. Kalen bypassed the food and went straight for the fridge. He ripped it open. It was empty. The silence that followed was heavier than the stone walls around us. The power failed, Kalen said, his voice void of emotion. The cooling unit died. The inhibitors. They're spoiled. He turned to look at me. The flashlight beam wavered in my hand. Kalen was sweating. Heavy, beads of perspiration rolling down his temples. His breathing was ragged. The stress of the escape, the combat, and the proximity to an unbonded Omega had pushed him to the edge. The storm outside was intensifying, the atmospheric pressure dropping, which triggered biological responses in alphas. He was going into a rut, and I was going into heat. Get out, Kalen rasped, clutching the edge of a table, his knuckles white. Get out, Lysander. Lock the door from the outside. The storm. I began, backing away. If I go out there, the radiation. If you stay in here, Kalen growled, his eyes glowing a vibrant, terrifying gold in the darkness. I will tear you apart. I won't be able to stop. We can ride it out. I stammered, my own body betraying me. A fever was consuming me, turning my blood to lava. The scent of him, cedar, wood smoke, and rain, was intoxicating. It wasn't fear anymore. It was need. Tie me up. Restrain yourself. You don't understand. Kalen took a step toward me, stalking his prey. I don't just want to knot you. I want to claim you. I want to bite you until you stop smelling like betrayal and start smelling like mine. The raw possessiveness in his voice hit me like a physical blow. This was the enemies to lovers trope slamming into reality. Then do it, I challenged, the words leaving my mouth before I could filter them. Kalen stopped. What? We need to survive the night, I said, my voice shaking. The storm will kill us if we separate. The rut will kill you if you don't relieve the pressure. The heat will kill me. It's just a transaction, Kalen. Like the intel. It was a lie. My heart was pounding not just from survival instinct, but because Kalen Dvorak was the most magnificent, terrifying creature I had ever seen. Kalen laughed, a dark, broken sound. A transaction. You truly are a whore, Lysander. And you're a monster, I retorted, stepping into his space. I grabbed the lapels of his tactical vest. So let's be monsters together. He snapped. He slammed me against the metal shelves, cans of peaches clattering to the floor. His mouth crashed onto mine, hungry, violent, and desperate. There was no tenderness, only the starving demand of two people at the end of the world. I clawed at his back, matching his intensity. We tore at each other's clothes. The cold air of the bunker mixed with the searing heat of our bodies. When he entered me, it was a possession. He marked me, his teeth grazing the scent gland at my neck, threatening to bite, threatening to create the permanent bond that would link our souls forever. Don't, I gasped, arching into him. Don't mark me. You'll regret it when you're sane. Kalen paused, his breath hot against my throat. He was trembling, fighting his instincts. You're right. He whispered into my skin, his voice thick with lust and hatred. I would hate myself for being bound to you. He didn't bite. But he didn't stop, either. We spent the night drowning in each other, a tangle of limbs and pheromones, finding solace in the eye of the storm. Morning brought a cold, gray light and awkward silence. We dressed without looking at each other. The dynamic had shifted, but not in the way I hoped. Kalen was colder now, walled off. He was ashamed. We move for the northern outpost, he said, checking his weapon. It's a 2-day trek. Kalen, don't, he cut me off. Last night was a medical necessity. Don't make it more than it was. I swallowed the hurt. I knew this would happen. Understood. We left the cathedral. The storm had cleared the air, but the mutants were active. We moved silently through the ruins. We were a mile from the outpost when the ambush happened. It wasn't mutants. It was raiders. A shot rang out, and Kalen jerked, his shoulder exploding in red. He went down. "Kalen!" I screamed, dropping to my knees beside him. 5 men emerged from the rubble, clad in mismatched armor, grinning through rot-blackened teeth. "Look at this," the leader sneered. "The great Commander Dvorak. And, oh, is that the pretty little traitor from the posters?" Kalen groaned, trying to lift his rifle with one arm. He was bleeding fast. Too fast. "Run," Kalen wheezed, shoving me with his good arm. "Lysander, go." I looked at him. I looked at the raiders. They were closing in. If I ran, I could make it. I knew the terrain. I could survive. That's what the vicious side character would do. He would leave the hero to die and save his own skin. But I looked at Kalen, the man who had spared me, who had protected me, who had held me through the storm even while hating me. I stood up. I unclipped the grenade from Kalen's belt. "Well," the raider leader laughed. "Are you gonna beg, pretty boy?" I pulled the pin. "No," I said, my voice steady. "I'm going to negotiate." I held the spoon of the grenade tight. "I know where the Sector 7 cache is. It's full of food. Weapons." The raiders paused. Greed flickered in their eyes. "Show us," the leader said. "I will," I said, stepping away from Kalen. "But you leave him. He's dying anyway. He's no use to you." "Lysander, no," Kalen roared, trying to stand, but collapsing back down. "Deal," the raider grinned. I walked toward them, leading them away from Kalen. Leading them back toward the cathedral. Back toward the nesting grounds of the scourge we had bypassed earlier. I was leading them to their death. And likely mine. I looked back at Kalen one last time. He was watching me with wide, horrified eyes. For the first time, there was no hatred. Only realization. "Live, Kalen," I whispered. I led the raiders into the ruins. 10 minutes later, I deliberately tripped the seismic alarm I had warned Kalen about days ago. The ground erupted. A massive scourge queen burst from the concrete. The raiders screamed. I dove into a narrow drainage pipe just as the grenade in my hand, which I had been repinning and unpinning nervously, slipped. I threw it at the queen and scrambled into the darkness. The explosion shook the earth. Then, darkness took me. I woke up to the sound of beeping. Clean air. The smell of antiseptic. I opened my eyes. White ceiling. I was in a hospital bed. He's awake. I turned my head. Kalen was sitting in a chair beside the bed. His arm was in a sling. He looked exhausted, beard grown out, dark circles under his eyes. "You came back?" I croaked. My throat felt like I had swallowed glass. "You idiot," Kalen said, but his voice lacked its usual bite. He leaned forward. "You used yourself as bait. You took out a scourge queen and 5 raiders with 1 grenade and a collapsing building. Did it work?" The patrol heard the explosion. "They found me. Then we dug you out. It took 12 hours. He reached out, his hand hovering over mine, then settled it there. His skin was warm. "Why?" he asked again. The same question from the wasteland. But the context was different now. "Because," I said, looking at our joined hands. "I told you. I wanted to change the story." Kalen stared at me for a long time. Then, he did something unexpected. He lifted my hand and pressed his lips to my knuckles. It wasn't a kiss of servitude, but of reverence. "You're under arrest, Lysander," he murmured against my skin. My heart sank. "I know. House arrest," he corrected, looking up at me with those burning gold eyes. "In my quarters. Indefinitely. You have a lot of intelligence regarding the enemy. I need you close." "Is that the only reason?" I asked, daring to hope. Kalen leaned in, his forehead resting against mine. "No. The truth is, I can't get your scent off me. And I'm done trying to wash it away." He hadn't marked me in the bunker. But looking at the intensity in his gaze, I knew it was only a matter of time. The vicious side character was dead. I was just Lysander now. And the hero? He was mine. And that is how the viper tamed the wolf. If you enjoyed seeing Lysander take control of his fate, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you forgive a husband who tried to kill you? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then, prompt image. Prompt, masterpiece, best quality, high-res, 1.2. Korean manhwa style, semi-realistic, digital art. 2 men, BL, Yaoi, Man 1. Kalen Dvorak, tall muscular alpha, Military tactical gear, torn black shirt, bandage on shoulder, scarred cheek. Intense glowing gold eyes, short dark hair, protective fierce expression. Man 2. Lysander Vance, slim beautiful Omega. Disheveled silver hair, wearing oversized borrowed military jacket, pale skin, defiant but vulnerable look, bloody lip. Background is a dimly lit ruined concrete bunker with cracks in walls. Rain pouring outside visible through broken ceiling. Scattered medical supplies on floor. Dramatic chiaroscuro lighting. Tense romantic atmosphere. Cinematic composition. Sharp focus. Intricate details.